All right, welcome everybody to a Monday expert interview. We have a change for you today. Amy Marks was going to be on our show, but she has some traveling conflicts that has her stuck in a place where she cannot be on today. However, don't fret. She will be on next Monday. We moved some things around. Today, we are going to play Amy Marks. Almost 1 year ago was on this show. Let's see what she had to say a year ago. And then on Monday, when we have her back on the show, let's have this conversation again and see where we're going. And just so you know, we are heading to Advancing Prefab. So you might see me hanging out with Amy in Phoenix, Arizona, the week of the 25th. You will also see me at the World of Modular. How do we do both? Well, you're just going to have to stay tuned and find out. We will be there. It's going to be planes, trains, and automobiles. But first, we can't bring you any of this great content without our sponsors. So a big shout out and thank you to Carson Holmquist and the team at Stream Logistics. They are experts in high-stake freight, and they are the perfect choice for projects with timelines and a specific delivery sequence. They are perfect for shipments with high complexity and unique constraints. The new methods of construction need new transportation solutions, and they are up for the challenge. Reach out to Carson Holmquist at streamlogistics.com. I'm telling you, it's not your normal shipping. You want to know where your stuff is? You want to be able to track it? You want the experts to help you organize your site and set these? These are the guys and girls that are ready to do it for you. All right. Also, a big shout out to our good friends, Combi Lift. They are the largest global manufacturer of multi-directional forklifts and straddle carriers, an acknowledged leader in long load handling solutions, offering a free warehouse and site optimization design service. That's right, free site optimization and design services for your warehouse. More than 50,000 Combi Lift units have been sold in over 85 countries since Combi Lift was established in 1998. Go and check Combi Lift out at their website, combilift.com. All right, without further ado, we are going to replay our interview with Amy Marks that just happened almost 1 year ago. So enjoy the interview. We'll talk soon. Amy Marks, what's happening?
Hey, David Cooper, how are you?
Yeah, you know what? I'm so much better now that you're finally on my show. I love it. I love what you're doing. Our paths cross in weird ways sometimes, but I'm really looking forward to this conversation and really diving into the Queen of Prefab's head on what this industry is doing, where it's going, and where do you think it's going to be heading in the future, right?
Right.
So
I'm real excited. By the way, the only reason I decided to come on your show is I know you guys are really expanding outside of just the modular industry, and it's a conversation that needs to be had. So I know you guys are really neutral and you're doing great things. So, but for that, this is a show in the past, I probably would have, we'd be friends and stuff, but I think you guys have been doing some amazing stuff. So I wanted to come on and support you guys.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. This is an invite only show. Nobody tells us who or what comes on this show, and we're all about driving this industry forward. It's about time it changed. It hasn't changed in over 150 years, and it just makes no sense to me. We should be the Tesla. We should be the Tesla. Everybody should be talking about us. That's my opinion. All right, Amy. So listen, we're going to have a lot of people tuning in today. If you have a question, please put a Q in front of your comment so it's easy for us to find in all the comments going back and forth. And with that said, Amy, we ask everybody on this show that we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, and you only have 2 minutes to do it. If you do not tell us everything, I know who will. Your daughter. She's really close to you, and I watch on TikTok, so I see it.
She will. Don't tell people about TikTok. She will definitely. I see some friends in the chat. Joel Hutchins, I see you out there.
I love it.
Yeah, let's see. I was born in New York, raised by wolves, pretty much. I raised myself. I always say I was a little bit of a throwaway kid, to be honest, and I probably shouldn't have gotten very far in life. But yeah, I'm lucky enough that in my life, I went undergrad to the University of Florida and had some great opportunities in lots of different industries. And my family owned a general contracting construction management business. I went back to help them at one point, and then had the opportunity to be a minority shareholder in a steel and concrete volumetric modular business. And hear a little echo. Sorry. And I had that opportunity. A lot of people know me from there in my early days, which is at this point scary enough, was like over 20 years ago. So yeah, I got involved in volumetric steel and concrete modules and assemblies like bathroom pods and things like that as a fabricator for many years, and then broke away and became the president of that company, and then broke away and bought all the intellectual property from that company and became a consultant around the world, helping people to optimize design for manufacturing and assembly and prefabrication on a large scale, mostly technology embedded projects, but worked for guys like the government of Singapore and very large tech companies and things like semiconductor or hospitals. So it was great to give up fabricating and go just do consulting. We were honestly the first prefabrication consultants at Excite Modular, and people used to laugh, especially out of the modular industry. They used to laugh at us and say like, oh, who's ever going to hire you for that? But I think good things that happened, or people did. And then later I got to Autodesk because Autodesk really came and asked my opinion on the strategy for industrialized construction and started a relationship there, and was lucky enough that I think we came to an agreement that I would leave my own business and come over and work with Autodesk, honestly, because I thought I would have be able to be neutral as well as have the scale and the resources to do really what I'm super passionate about. That's actually how they convinced me to come over, as well as, it's a great place to work, to be honest, that they appreciated my authentic self and the way in which that I operate and my brain operates, and what our vision is for the future, I think. And so that was really great. So I now work at Autodesk. And let's see, I'm a mom. I live in New Jersey and I travel the world. And I don't know, I feel like this is my passion along with being a mom. So that's pretty much it.
Well, I love it because one, you're a great mom. I have to just say that, and I also think that the passion for the industry is something that I find is a common occurrence when we're talking with people on this show that have taken it to the next level, that have taken their lives, their careers to the next level, and if you don't have passion, you're not going to go very far, but that is something that you have a ton of. So, and I thank you for that. And I thank you for everything you're doing in our industry.
Thanks. Which industry, by the way, Dave Cooper, that's what we're going to get to next. Like, which industry are we talking about here?
Oh, we're going to talk about all kinds of industries, But first, I want to get into, my first question for you is you're an event ambassador and the chair for Advancing Prefabrication Conference on Transforming the AEC Industry, right, through industrialization. And my question is this, you use the word prefab. Is prefab the catch-all term for IC, MMC, offsite construction? And has prefab advanced in your mind?
I think it's part of industrialized construction. I used to say, modern methods of construction for that catch-all phrase. I felt like the second I said the word modern, it was old before it came out of my mouth. And so industrialized construction is really the application of manufacturing techniques to the entirety of the built environment. So the physicality of that, the manifestation of that is prefabrication, which is a continuum, right, of pieces and parts. We'll talk about them later, I'm sure. But there are other things involved in industrialized construction, like technology and process enablers, things like, building information modeling and design for manufacturing and assembly principles, but also things like the Internet of Things and big data and analytics. And then I think also advanced building techniques, things like automation and robotics, or robotics automation even, and 3D printing and things like that. So I think I always call it like the house that industrialized construction built. And it's a lot of things, right? So applying to a lot of the stakeholders in the ecosystem, right? Not just one. So I use the term prefabrication for the physicality of the continuum of pieces and parts.
Yeah, love it, love it. So one of the things that we talked about, and this kind of leads back into that question a little bit, is you use the term ecosystem of construction quite regularly as well. What is the ecosystem? How is it going to evolve? How is it going to transform? How is it going to advance in your mind?
So the built environment, not that word, but the built environment is really from everything from, owners and architects and builders, all the stakeholders, including manufacturers, as well as subcontractors and general contractors. We're really a bunch of different industries, right? Like, it's funny. I know you and I, when you say we, your history has been, you're part of the modular industry, right?
That's right.
So I think the stakeholders are not just in the modular, like one small little industry that's been around for a long time, But truly, the ecosystem is about owners and owner operators, designers and engineers who are in a different industry, right? Even architects and engineers are in different industries. Right. And then you've got the builders as well as the manufacturers and subcontractors, as well as the operators. At the end, if they're not the same as the owners. So I think we are an ecosystem in the past of siloed industries with different stakeholders, different value drivers. And I think when people say we to me, or they say the word industry, I ask them what industry, like the architecture industry, the mechanical contractors industry. Like, to me, that's important to note, because I don't know what pronouns mean anymore if you say we or like us, or do you know what I'm saying? So
yeah. Well, I mean, but that's exactly it. If we don't know, how does anybody else know?
Well, and you have to know what your drivers are and what part of the ecosystem you're in and what that's changing to be, because our roles are changing in that ecosystem, right? As convergence happens, right? And design, make, and operate become one integrated process in a lot of cases. Who are you anymore in that ecosystem? Are you a builder? Well, not if you're, enabling prefabrication or design productization up front. Who are you? Like, what are you becoming? What do you call the owners that are moving across and doing fabrication for themselves? Right. What do you call subcontractors that have become more like manufacturers? What do you call manufacturers that are now doing larger assemblies? So I think convergence has made it much more fluid in what the roles are going to be in the future. And I think, things like the new normal report and McKinsey's report has shown us that there'll be a lot of convergence happening.
Sure. And because we're going to talk about definitions a lot today and what things mean and what have you. So what defines the pieces and parts of the ecosystem, and what are the categories or products within the ecosystem in your mind?
The physical manifestation, like what I call the prefabrication continuum.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think definitely the way it works. And by the way, I don't even, just to be honest, I don't love the word prefabrication anymore, to be clear. Like, I think we're going to move to all manufactured products at some point. I'm using this as a stopover language because we all know what it means. But I think the continuum is really starts with advanced building products, products that are manufactured that reduce drying time, curing time, welding, hot work, just actual building manufactured products that, come every day, like things like blaze frame or zip board or, Victolic piping, things like that, right? And then I think you move up into single trade assemblies, which are somewhat simple single trade. So they could be like framed walls or pipe spools or single trade electrical prefabricated assemblies. And then, you move into multi-trade, which are both volumetric and non-volumetric in nature, meaning they could be like, I could stand in them if they're volumetric. I always used to use that, or they're flat if they're non-volumetric. And then you move to volumetric modules, which are the structure of the building. To me, the only time I say modules, if they are volumetric and they are the structure of the building. So that's the only distinction. The rest of it, again, it's a continuum of pieces and parts. And not one of them is better than another, right? So it's like sometimes volumetric mods are the worst application, and sometimes single trade is the best application. And sometimes an aggregation of lots of those are the same. So I think that's really important, that we recognize that it's really specific to the use case, right?
Right. And how important is it in your mind for our industry to actually have a definition for what category or where everybody falls? So if somebody's looking from the outside in our industry, let's just say I'm a developer, or I'm somebody that wants to find a better way to build within our ecosystem, if that's what we're going to call it. How do they start? How do they know where to go? How do they know if modular is the right term, or is volumetric modular the right term, or is panelized the right term, or is system panelized the right term? Do you spell it with a hyphen? Do you not spell it with a hyphen? Is it off-site with a hyphen? Is it off-site without a hyphen?
Yeah.
We're a little all over the place, right?
Well, first of all, let me just fix one thing. Offsite is only fabrication location specific. Anybody that uses offsite, and it's my fault. My old company was named Xsite. I brought that word offsite to the US. Nobody said offsite before I started saying offsite and Xsite, to be honest. I was trying to get away from this prefabrication word, and I was like, let me use offsite. And now I realize, when you look at things like what Mace is doing, or what Royal BAM Group is doing on site with prefabricate, they have flying factories on site. You can't call that off site. And by the way, the UK is the home of the word off site. So when I ask everybody in the audience, when I'm speaking in the UK, I'm like, can you call this off site? And they were like, no. So I'm like, there you go. It's just location specific fabrication, if you think, right? So I think there's the other, probably the most egregious error is people start calling design for manufacturing and assembly. as if it's the physical manifestation. That's not true. Those are the design choices you make that enable fabrication down the line, up front in the design and engineering process. But here's like, this is going to sound maybe like a little self-centered when I say this, but I've been teaching pretty much the same language for, I don't know, 15 years, 10 years. It's like we've gone around the world doing that when there was no one else doing it. And I came to Autodesk, honestly, to be neutral and to create a knowledge center here. Like even today, we're talking, you and I, and you're like, oh, you have a glossary? Like, let's, why? I'm going to be 50 this year in 4 months, by the way, scary as that is. And like when I retire and don't feel like working anymore, like I don't want my phone to ring and them to be like, could you tell me who in the supply chain knows how to make this thing? Or like, could you help me? So I came to Autodesk to create a knowledge center. And when you create that knowledge center, we're going to use the language that is most widely accepted. And we're going to evolve it over time when things change. And again, like I'm telling you, I don't, even though I'm the queen of prefab, I'm like, I don't love the word prefab anymore, to be honest.
Right.
So I think that changes as things change within the technology stack and the way in which the ecosystem interacts with each other, right? I mean, 10 years ago, I would have never said there's a question in the chat about builders. They'll still manage the process. I don't know, will they? Maybe not. Maybe they'll just be systems integrator type guys that are only enabling assembly on site. Maybe that's what they become. So I think, oh, but yeah, I know. The ANSI standards are usually about modular. And so there are groups on here chatting that, well, if only there was an ANSI standard. Well, if only those people looked out for the whole ecosystem and not just a sliver. I mean, those groups are typically have been known to do temporary volumetric modular that it's coming from. So they're not, unfortunately, the most widely educated groups that are coming up with some of the standards. You know, and that's why there's such, by the way, that's why we have such a problem. So the groups that have existed in the past have not done such a great job, or else you wouldn't be asking me that question, right, Dave Cooper? Like,
that's
you wouldn't know, where do people go? Like, so that's proof point that like what's been done in the past hasn't really worked, or else they would know.
Yeah. Well, that's it. You know what? We need to make a soapbox for Amy. I have my own soapbox that I put up here that I stand on, and it's absolutely true because I say it all the time. People are probably tired of hearing me saying it. If you have the perfect solution and you have it all figured out, you have the definitions, terminology, we wouldn't only be 4 or 5% of this entire industry. It makes no sense to me.
Listen, the definitions are only as good as the people that are informed that made them. So if the people that made them weren't that informed and never got their hands dirty and didn't really know what the right words should be, they're going to be wrong. And so therefore they'll be changed. And it's really not going to matter because the people that actually do the most work and do the things that have happened will make that say. So I don't believe in the word offsite construction. Most of the world doesn't either, especially when you start talking about location specific. But again, if you've traveled the world and you've worked and actually gotten your hands dirty, that's a different conversation.
Right.
That's my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. So in your mind, is there a clear disparity between like government and private clients and their understanding of prefab solutions? You know, the different forms of prefab, AKA categories of offsite that may need, or that they may need, or that they should ask for. You know, I think because like you mentioned, they're like Singapore, UK, they do have some pretty clear defined categories in place. And at least from what I can see, it's made a difference on, you know, the way people are using the terminology, what it's being called in their circles.
I think, listen, you know, I worked in Singapore for many years as their prefabrication expert on their international panel of experts. I did. I don't know if you know that about me.
Oh,
so
I know it now.
Yeah, the whole DFMA principles that we brought over there, you know, or what went on. And again, they're not using offsite either, you know, for the record. They're using other terminology in Singapore. They decided to use things like PPVC and PBUs for bathroom pods and things like that. So again, like you need to, the ecosystem influencers, not the little guys, not unfortunately, not the little, and I'll be honest, like not the people that have been trying to do it in the past, but the actual people that have big influence, right? Big owners, big serial owners, you know, a phrase that I've come up with as well in the past that'll be used in some other way. But guys that have big geographic programs that need consistency and certainty, those guys are the ones, and governments that are doing wide scale programs and things like that, right? I've just met with people out of Ireland and said, does offsite make sense for this? And showing them what Mace is doing. They're like, no, that makes absolutely no sense that that's the word. There's like, it makes zero sense. And the confusion of, you know, doing an offsite retreat, when you look up offsite, lots of things come up, right? So that's the problem. So when you pick the words, you have to be very specific and you have to understand branding and you have to understand like what the majority of people are using and all those things. So I think, yes, there's always going to be some outliers in different countries that want to make up their own words and do some things. But I think for 20 years, you know, when other associations didn't believe there was such a thing outside of modular, when I was saying things like, the continuum and they thought I was crazy. Like now, yeah, you jumped on the bandwagon, but you're still, some are still a little bit behind on what the current vernacular is in different geos, right? The vernacular, and honestly, it won't matter. To be honest, I don't think the vernacular, you have to get to a starting point, but eventually when the tech enables and the process, it enables the process and the ecosystem to participate, those things will work themselves out. So again, I don't think it's a modular group that does it. I do think it's the people that are people like Nika and the MCAA and, you know, other people like that actually agree on some of the terminology that's been utilized and some new terminology that's never been defined because things are changing. So I think that's the thing. And by the way, that's true of the ecosystem. Like you have people obviously chatting that are part of the modular industry. They're not part of the design, build, operate ecosystem. They're a sliver. They're not the whole thing. So I think you got to start asking yourselves, are we opening up our eyes and looking around? You know, I agree with Aaron Peterson out there. The $300 billion doesn't just go away. They do bite. But you know what, Aaron, interestingly enough, all those guys are actually trying to figure out what their role is in the future. They're not just sitting back and biting, right? I'm sorry if I'm not supposed to do that and read from the questions. But
that's okay. That's okay. We're going to go. Why don't we just go to some questions while we have some people out there?
But my point is, they're not just sitting back and like fighting back. They're recognizing they have to change their role in what the process is. They're recognizing they have to enable and be systems integrators. They're recognizing they are starting to fab. Many of these builders are buying fab shops. I could point to like the top 30 builders in the world and which ones own fabrication facilities. So are they the builder now, or are they a systems integrator that happens to also be a manufacturer that's part of the ecosystem? So they're not just sitting back, right? They are definitely doing some different things. I'll tell you, and I think, look, it's going to take some time to do them right. Even in the UK, what they're doing with some of the biggest schemes in the world, you know, I have clients that come to me now and they're like, this doesn't make sense, this procurement methodology with what I want to do. Why? Usually somebody came up with some language and some process that they never tried before that didn't work. And they're learning those hard lessons that we all had to learn for the last 25 years, except they memorialize them in some sort of process right now or language that doesn't work. And so that's why people are struggling a little bit. And also, to be honest, it's why, you know, we're getting a lot of requests for consulting over at Autodesk. We've created a consulting group for convergence, not just about one particular type, right? We have to make sure that we can make that happen, right? So that not one. By the way, there's no one ring to rule them all. I always say there's no one type of tech, no one type of process, no one type of company that's going to reign supreme, right?
Love it. Hey, let's go to the comments, say hello to a few people. Let's go to the questions. There's some more that are out there. And for those of you who are watching, please put a Q in front of your question so I don't have to try and read all the banter in between the questions. So put a Q if you do have a question, and we're going to get to that. And also right now, please hit that like and share button. And if you are not following Amy Marks, you're wrong. You should be following Amy Marks if you have any interest in learning about this industry and where it's going. So listen, love it, love it, love it. Amy, are you on Twitch yet? You need to be on Twitch.
I'm not on Twitch, but I am on like pretty much every social media known to man at this point. I will tell you, the one you mentioned earlier is a little more personal than others. I always say I'm a single mom. So if, you know, these days, if you need to find a date, there are some social media you don't want to follow me on, but yeah.
You know what though? I think what's refreshing about speaking or talking with you on air and off air is it's real. And I love that.
I'm the same person all the time. That's for sure. I'm not sure if that makes 100%. Sense.
All right, let's go to it. So Joel Hutchins, I know you know Joel Hutchins, Splash Modular, Revaya, the crazy Aussie. I love him. All right, Aaron Peterson, glad you said all the stakeholders. Great. Aaron, it's 1/5 of the world economy.
He's
Aaron's
saying,
busy on here today.
And by the way, the thing that, interestingly enough, about the economy, the world economy that you're mentioning, Aaron, most people read the report from McKinsey, and I don't want to say they read it wrong, but they read it in some of the words that were used. Again, they used offsite construction. And I've talked to them after the fact, and they're like, it's probably not the right language, like in some ways. And we went through sort of what was really included in that. And some of the things they broke down didn't make sense. But although the data was right, it came from things like heavy MEP, and yet MEP is not really listed in some of the pieces and parts they draw out. So the data is good, but some of the language that we use is not exactly correct. You know, like I look at the chart of, you know, the fact that 45% of the, you know, that $14 trillion ecosystem is moving towards industrialized construction processes, and who is really going to win. And I've looked at some other studies, and upfront, it is not the volumetric modular building that is going to win. It's pieces and parts mostly, right? You know, for years and years, by the way, for years and years, I was part of associations that didn't agree with the fact that they were going to be pieces and parts and they didn't agree the fact that they would be shipped from other places around the world, and told me that I was crazy. So we now know that that's just not true, right? So we now know that there are winners and losers in that McKinsey report. You have to look at that. There are things that are in red and things that are I think, purple. And you'll see that some of them, the layers of our ecosystem and the skill set they have now get wiped off the face of the earth. But also they don't read the fact that there's other value up for grabs. If you look at that chart, like sort of all the way to the right, that if you get good at some of this stuff, like becoming a systems integrator, as we mentioned, or you get very good at things like productization and manufacturing, you have more value than they're even showing there. Or you get very good, I mean, tech doubled actually in what happens in the future. If we get very good at that at Autodesk, and I saw a couple questions, we have the opportunity to take some of that value up for grabs. So I think that's the good news and the bad news of that report. There are winners and losers unless you change your current, process and roles in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. And I also don't think that the McKinsey reports gets into enough depth for a lot of people to make an educated decision about whether coming into our industry, no matter the parts, actually works or not. You can go ahead and put that question back up. All right, Amy, great content saying that there is not one process that is universal. Each application, geographical area, et cetera, will dictate the processes used as part of the manufactured process. Ben Hershey.
I love that. I mean, listen, here's the bottom line about why I came to Autodesk. And I know that Joel Hutchins, I'm going to work your question in too, because he asked, like, what is Autodesk really doing? Well, first, we need to make this easier. And it's not easy. You can write whatever you've written in the past or there's the issue is that there are lots of different applications, lots of different types of prefabrication and the physicality manufactured products that need to be made. And it really, truly at Autodesk, we want to make that process of enabling them in the design process, right? Moving that make and operate information up into design. We want to make that easier. That's our first thing in our strategy. Second, we have to enable an ecosystem. We have to enable a platform for the ecosystem we just talked about. You can't do it for just one. And in order to do that for everybody, the reason I came to Autodesk is we have products that cross over many of those stakeholders, from AutoCAD and Revit and design and things like, the Autodesk Construction Cloud and our new unified product offering in construction, as well as our manufacturing tools. So there's a lot of tech. Now, here's where it gets tricky, right? The tech is not the same pathway. Imagine a precast wall panel versus like a volume. Let's just say like I'll make it easy, a medical head wall that has lots of MEP. That precast panel as a product and that head wall as a product, when it becomes productized, takes a different pathway, a different pattern, almost like a neurological pathway across the product portfolio, at least that we have. And because we have the full stack, and it interacts with lots of other like ecosystem partners that we have when the functionality doesn't exist within the sort of anchor portfolio products. It's complicated, right? And then you complicate it by the geo, right? Because some people want particular types of, we have different codes across the geo and different preferences across geos and things like that. So this is very hard, right? So anyone that says they've solved it already is lying to you. I hate to say it like that. So anyone's like, well, we have the answers. You don't have the answers because it's a different process for a million different products. And the only way you can do that is, by the way, it can't live in just my head. And I don't have a million products actually that I've integrated in my head. You need things like machine learning and AI to be, things like computational design. Joel and I love computational design. So you need those things in order to utilize things like generative design and connecting an ecosystem of supply chain partners. You have to have that. It's not just going to be about who called it something and, everybody has to follow my process. And that's how you get this. That's wrong, right? We need to make this accessible to all the people that are trying to do, something really innovative. Enable these innovators for what's truly the new possible, right? And it's complicated.
Yeah. Oh, it's super complicated for sure. Right? All right, thanks. That was Ben Hershey. You got her going. Forward Solutions Group. Thank you so much, Ben.
I love it.
Ben sponsors our Wednesday show for us at Forward Solutions Group. And man, if you don't know him, Amy, he's the salt of the earth guy. You'd love to know him. Great question.
And by the way, the third pillar of our strategy, other than making it easier and connecting an ecosystem with the platform, you have to have a place where this lives, right? That's really why I came to Autodesk, because I believe that Autodesk is a neutral place that enables lots of different companies to partner with us and create a platform that is best for everybody at the end, and even competitors and things like that are integrating within our platform. And I think I came here because, I don't know, I think, I'm writing a book called, the working title is sort of The Innovator's Deception, based like a play on Clayton Christensen's work, because he talked about the fact that you could chip away at the bottom of an industry and you could displace the incumbent. Okay,
Yeah.
that might be true of one industry, of one technology swap. We're not that. We just said we're an ecosystem. That's different. You have to have top-down influencers from ecosystem partners. You need to have certain things in place in different geos that make it more susceptible to change or less, or make it adverse for change. There's a lot. This is complex. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I came really to Autodesk because I don't know any other company in the world. I looked around before I gave up my own business that is positioned enough with the right resources and the right users and customers and the right culture to do something like this. And I think truly we need help from everyone in the ecosystem. Really important, that happens.
Right.
Everyone, even the people that are going head to head with me right now in the comments that we don't agree. We need truly everyone.
That's all right. That's what the show's all about. Real conversation. All right. Dwayne C. Barney, residential construction. The role as a builder has always been a manager of the process. The players and the processes are simply changing, he says.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's just like we've rearranged some things. Remember what I just said. Some people are losers in that chart, which means that part of the process goes away, right? So what do you do then? So by the way, my goal in life is to enable designers to use real things up front, right? Like to really enable designers to design with certainty, not just for cost and schedule, but for sustainability purposes. For, we have 40% of what's in the landfill in our planet is construction waste, period.
That's
right. So I would like to say that digital waste leads to physical waste. And, all the process that we enable through digital waste gets, I don't know, 10-fold, 20-fold. We should probably do a study on like what digital waste leads to in physical waste, but it's a lot, right? And so at the end of the day, productization and things like computational design and generative design, this is not a modular versus non-modular conversation. That's so small-minded. Like this is way bigger than that, right? This is about how we are truly going to save the planet. And we're going to save parts of this industry that, but for this, are going away. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love the fact that you're able to. I do. I love the fact that you're able to just talk and be catching all the comments at the same time. I love the multitasking. All right, let's put another question.
I'm a mom. That's why.
You got it nailed down. All right, question from Adrian Mitchell. Amy, in your opinion, what is the biggest reason DFMA is taking so long to integrate into the construction industry versus most other industries? Why are we so far behind versus other industries? I love this question.
I'm going to grab my red shoe for those of you who know my red shoe.
Oh, wait, let me put you full screen.
All right, I'm going to grab my red shoe. So think about design for manufacturing and assembly. And then I'm going to tell you how I bought my shoe. Right now in construction and design, we're basically back in the day where I would, I'd be like, I really need shoes. And I'd walk down barefoot to my local shoemaker and he'd say, Amy, put your foot down on paper. And he'd draw a line around my toes. And he would say, okay, come back in a couple of weeks. What do you want the shoe to look like? And I would say, well, I want it to be red and I think it should be shiny. It'd be great if it was high. And he was like, oh, well, let me see what's available at the market. And then he would go a couple of weeks later, he'd see what was available. And then I'd come back and that would be like whatever he made my shoe for, and it wasn't really done in the amount of time because they didn't have what he needed at the market. And quite frankly, the red leather was more expensive than black. And he gave me at the end my shoe. It's just called Amy's shoe. This is not called Amy's shoe, Adrian. This is called an 8.5. The reason this is an 8.5 is that I bought it on a connected ecosystem that has a direct connection between buyers and sellers, where you have to define something in order to buy it. Right. So the problem with DFMA as a principle, right, is that not only, so put my shoe aside, right? So we buy construction and design the way that when I used to put my foot down on paper, we're not buying construction and design the way that I buy everything else on this planet. Right. And in order to do that, you truly have to have, the DFMA principles embedded within products, within productization, creating 8.5s. Right. So I always say, look, there's a difference between fabrication and productization. Fabrication is done, yes, with DFMA principles up front, informing it, and but at the end of the day, productization is like a generator. They come in scalable capacities, right. What they are. We design around products. Fabrication, we design, sort of half what we want and half where it fits. Nobody wakes up as an architect and says, I'm going to design a 217.5 horsepower generator today. So DFMA is hard because it really truly means you have to understand the manufacturer, how their production methodology works, and who's supporting them with what details and what supply chain partners. And then you have to also know how they're going to be assembling that piece and part. I know one precast wall panel has 55 different DFMA instructions. Okay, multiply that by the number of proprietary precast systems that exist in the world. Multiply that by, the number of different types of wall panels. It's impossible for one human being to actually enable all of DFMA widespread. You need technology for that, right? You need to be productized. You need to enable productization like my shoe as an 8.5 so that we can connect and pick things as standards and things like that, right? And the product, I want to read what Joel's saying because pull up Joel's comments. I love this conversation with Joel. The product is the process, not the shoe. Exactly. So I think that process, that bill of process, not just bill of materials, that those DFMA principles are embedded within the product itself. Like you know what you get when you have a generator. You know what how to integrate it, what the sizes are, when you can get it, the lead times, what it costs. You know that, right? So again, like I think our words we're using now are stopgap words to a place that's enabled, an enabled platform with productization. That's what's going on. You know what I mean? And I love that we have different procurement strategies. That's fine. But I think at the end of the day, the gist of it is this. We're buying things by hand right now. We're doing DFMA by hand. Even my friend Jamie at Brighton Woods, he's like, yeah, we had to buy hand, pick a few things for what they're doing. But you truly need to be enabled in a connected, ecosystem like I bought my shoe. That's the point. You might not like my shoe as the example. But the point is, you've got to be in a place like that where we use tech to understand what it is with certainty that we're purchasing.
Well, I love that you just have a red shoe on hand for a moment's notice stream. So that's impressive by itself. So listen, you talked about the evolution of shoes. Let's talk about the future of supply chain, defining something before you buy it, right? How do we define the categories, and how does the future supply chain feed that demand? What is the tech that is required for this process? So, I think this is where we're a little bit stuck in my mind. What is your thought?
Agreed. So here's the deal. Not one group can change this, right? So like I could fix this technology stack and the connectivity situation of all this stuff and with using it. Right. But unless people productize things, and I'm talking about subcontractors as an example, right? Unless they decide like pipe racks come in these standard sizes and, central utility plants come like this. And this is how we stand. By the way, you can always buy custom. I don't have to buy this. I can go get a pair of custom shoes and they're much more expensive. The problem is everything we buy right now is pretty custom, which is why it's very expensive. So like, just so we're clear, the nice thing about it is that you need everybody to pull their weight right now. And that's why it's so difficult. You need people that are making things to productize. Right. You need builders to really understand how to integrate things, right? And not just I heard Turner, actually, I was in a data center thing and they said, we realize we have to be the best integrator of pieces and parts on the job site. I was like, wow, what a great thing to say. Like that their future depends on that for high tech buildings. So I think it's Ben Kaplan that said it. So, you've got those guys that have to change the way their process works, right? And the way they procure things and their scopes are written. Look, target value design is very trade centric. It needs to be element centric. All the lean tools are very trade centric. So you need the tools and scopes and contracts we're using to completely change, and the risk profiles of that and the insurance that's bought and all those things have to change that are making this happen. You need designers to truly have a place in which they can design with products, right? And I think you need to have owners that are demanding this change, right? So, and that's what you're seeing. You're seeing serial owners demand change. Why? Not because they want a cheaper building. They're doing this because they need operational consistency and large programs across many geos. And they're not getting that from the current ecosystem. They're just not, right? And so everyone has to, and then as a tech company, we need to enable platform thinking with productization and workflows that make sense, that are known and live in a knowledge center. So when you say, what is the best way to do a head wall or a bathroom pod or a volumetric module or whatever, like this is what you do. Here's how you design for it. Here's where you go. This is how you do it next. And it's procured this way, and that everything needs to support that. So by the way, I always say it's not hard to prefabricate pipe. It's hard to find leadership, culture, process, and tech that enables you to prefabricate pipe. We all know that prefabricating pipe is possible. How many jobs do we go to that are not prefabricating pipe?
Right.
That's not our issue, right? It's like getting into the nomenclature a little bit. It's like we could fight over whether it's called modular or offsite for years, but it is not making anything better, right? It's so much bigger than that conversation.
It is bigger. So let's go to the audience for some more comments and questions here. That's what they're here for, is to meet Amy Marks. So let's do it. Aaron, you're getting the award today. Do you think vertical integration happens this year with the strain of supply? Will builders just buy the supply chain?
I mean, they've been buying the supply chain in some ways, right? Like
Yeah.
you do know that most of the builders I know have bought or started up some sort of fabrication company and self-performing some part of that, right? Most of them, not all of them. I think that's an important thing to note, right? So it's happening already. And by the way, that's true of the MEP trades. Like, I call the MEP trades, like some of them are turning into super subs. They're buying each other. And the reason they're buying each other is it's hard to navigate when contracts are trade centric. It's hard to navigate when tools are trade centric, when all they want to do is multi-trade to make things easier and more efficient for their fabrication processes. So they're becoming more like super subs. And when that happens, they hold a lot of knowledge in fabrication that other groups don't hold, especially when they become super subs.
Love it. Love it. Thanks, Aaron. Next question, please. All right. Juan Carlos. It could be interesting working on data-driven decisions for choosing the IC constructive systems with the right level of completion. Autodesk is working on this subject.
Well, that's a really big subject, let's say. I think we're always working on that subject, which is how do you make design choices that are consistent with one thing we've done really well at is with carbon. We're trying to make that easier for you when you're designing to understand carbon. I think, we're doing that, working with even like we have a beta test out for automated shop drawing process for things that can't go CAD CAM. That gives you certainty. You push a button, it works within Revit and Inventor as an interface. I think everything we're doing is data driven, and how do we really empower our customers to make better decisions. I mean, the whole unified product offering, we're really focused on data and like making decisions out of data as a construction company, if you're a design build company, if you're doing that. I think we are a data-driven company. So it's a weird question because I think we're working on it all the time. I think, the fact that I work there now and we have a whole team and I work cross-functional across many of the products and the investment, that they're making in this, I think we all recognize that it's funny, at Autodesk, I actually say, like, I do believe we have a lot of the pieces and parts to make this happen. Right. Sometimes that's when I think you need to rearrange some of it, that it works a little bit differently because we're on the tech side, right? So I think some of that gets reversed and then the process becomes much easier, right? When you think about things and moving that design make information up front, the make and operate information up front into design. Yeah, and I think that's a big focus that we're doing all the time, on many levels, right, at Autodesk.
Yeah, for sure. All right, next question. Chris Roush, what is the end goal of generative design and construction? Is it just sorting through parametric options in an automated manner, or will we ever see the more organic form finding we see with generative design in manufacturing?
Well, that's a pretty big question. We do have some great generative products within our manufacturing tools like Fusion. We do have generative design in Revit and things like that. I am not the product manager of generative design, so I don't think that I can truly speak on what the end goal scenario that is. What I can speak on is that when you're utilizing things, as an example, I talked about the connective tissue product that we have that we're in beta, connecting Revit and Inventor. I don't have to productize down to the fastener level detail only. I have parameters I can actually put in and make, products of lots of those parameters, as long as they fit within my manufacturing design for manufacturing and assembly parameters. So honestly, I think the definition of what generative design will look like will actually probably change and it'll morph into some amazing things in the future. I'm talking future, not what's happening today with it. But if you think about, we just bought Spacemaker, what a fantastic product that is. And it's mostly geometric based and stuff. But when you think about what could be with some of those things, along with productization and some other types of things that are happening in generative and things like digital twin that we work on there too, it's all connected, right? So you have to start thinking bigger. You have to start seeing that this is not about one box. This is not about one factory. This is not about, one design choice. This is how do we start thinking about things so that we can utilize the tools at our disposal, not just Autodesk, but within the ecosystem of the platform, right? I think that's super important. It's a different question. And I do think generative design plays a big role in that. And I think, there'll be a lot of great things in the future that generative design would enable, through a productized world.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, some of the stuff that's out there now, like you said, with the generative design and parametric design, it's amazing. It's amazing technology and how they're using it. I mean, the fact that you can travel, you don't even have to travel the world anymore to go find a piece of land and build your buildings on it to see what you can put there. If you think about some of the things that are out there.
I'm saying, like, look what Space
Right?
Maker's already done. Like, for years, it's not like it has to come. It already exists, like some of that stuff. Now, I think it gets different. It gets a little bit more directly tied to, you know, actual physicality of product and things. And not that it's not now, but I think just deeper, you know, as we keep talking about the supply chain, getting better at becoming more like manufacturers, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's time. It is time. All right. Another question. Then we're going to go back to our conversation. Steve Burrows. What's happening, Steve?
Hey,
Thanks
Steve
for joining us.
Burrows.
Continuity of cost data from design through to the end of life has to be demystified so that form can follow finance. Love it.
Agreed. But that means we got to get rid of some digital waste. And this is what's so hard about it. Ready, Steve? Okay. If you currently get paid to make intent drawings, or you currently get paid to make constructability drawings or BIM models for pricing only, if you currently get paid to draw something without certainty and what is actually going to be built at the end, it will provide some digital waste, and then it'll get changed, and then it will get a different cost to it, and then it'll get reapplied. So it's like the whole notion of like, look, we all know that people draw some things these days, and by the time it gets down to the guy who makes it, those drawings get chucked in the trash, and then it gets redrawn, and not in the best possible way, because they have to redraw it within the parameters and spaces that have been set forth for whatever the element is they're trying to now fabricate, like a Frankenstein type thing that they wouldn't have started that way had they been involved in the front of the process, or if tech enabled that product to be up in the front of the process, right? So you're right, it has to be enabled, but it's not as simple as saying, it's really about that productization piece, right? It's like, in order to know what things cost, you have to know what things are, right? That's the whole thing about my shoe. I know exactly what this shoe cost before I bought it. I knew exactly when it was going to come. I knew exactly the size it was going to be. Right. And it came to my door like Santa delivered it. What if building pieces and parts were like that? What if the world was like that? What if you could buy head walls like that? And I'm just saying, what if it was like that? You would have cost certainty. I know what things cost when I buy them from other ecosystems.
Well, we should know what they cost. I mean, we've been doing this a long time. It doesn't make sense that we don't know what they cost. But
who should know? Who should know? How do you expect that guy who gets paid for intent? What's incentivizing him to know? He's getting paid. Right. So that's the thing. So I like my friends at KHL, they're engineers. The president there, Jim Tavernelli, a friend of mine, said, I had to recognize that 90% of what I drew got chucked in the garbage. I had to burn my business. He uses these words. I had to burn my business to the ground and start working with guys that actually made stuff and making their drawings that are enabled up front, because that's truly where I've gotten rid of waste within the process. And he's right. He's like, I had to give up getting paid for garbage. That's really for things that would never be built, for waste, for digital waste. Forget about the word garbage. People get offended. For digital waste. He had to give up getting paid for digital waste and start getting paid for actual value. By the way, I'm a lean practitioner. You really want to talk about lean? That's lean. When you actually draw things of value, not things that are going to be, discarded.
Love it. Love it. Perfect. All right, let's move back to our conversation here. Amy, can you believe it's been 52 minutes already? Time flies when we're having fun. Huh?
I know.
I love it. All right, we're gonna couple more questions, couple more comments, and then we're gonna wrap this up for you. All right, clearly there's a lot of problems facing U.S. builders. What is the number one thing you think builders should be on the lookout for? We've talked about consolidation. We've talked about productization, digitization, a system integrator's approach, mindset shifts. Are there any other factors that we should be on the lookout for? What haven't we talked about?
I mean, builders is a wide term, right? So I'm gonna think you mean like general contractors, construction managers when you say builders, or
Sure.
I'll take it to two places. Let's start with one that's a little easier first. I know there's a lot of people here from the modular industry. If you're a small modular builder here and you're not envisioning what your exit strategy is, and you think you can compete against these big guys that have more resources, more money, more tech, like eventually you can do it for now, but eventually like you should be thinking about what your plan is, right? Because it's hard to compete when global giant companies are coming in to try to do what you're doing, right? And I think you should think about that as like, how prepared are you? What would they actually buy from you? Not just your work in progress. What processes, what tech you have enabled, what ways in which, like, that's important for it. Like, I'm talking to some of your guys that watch your show. Like, if you think you're going to exist on the planet as a specialty modular contractor for the rest, maybe not. So you should start thinking. If you start thinking about builders now, right? And I think of like the big tier 1 builders. What do they have to worry about? I mean, most of them have been integrating in fab and they're already worried, right? Like for a long time. I think the thing that they should be really recognizing is they have a lot of processes within what they do every day that create process entropy that stop this from happening, right? Their insurance, their scopes, their design review, like all that stuff needs to be revamped. And that's holding them back from actually achieving what they want as systems integrators or, so I think that they need to recognize that they're going to have to like literally wipe those pieces of paper off the table and start from scratch. And how do we do that if they really want to succeed? But for that, I think they are at risk because many of the serial owners are already going over their heads to the MEP super subs to productize and enable them like equipment in the build. So the builders will have smaller and smaller scopes as more and more products, get ahead of them in the design process. So I think they should recognize those two things are going to be, important.
Moving forward, for sure. So if we could clearly define and universally kind of accept categories, could the ecosystem of the built environment serve these categories better if they were clearly defined? In other words, could those tier 1 builders actually succeed or excel faster if we were defining the categories?
Actually, right now, I don't think the definition is that important. Right.
Yeah.
I think because you're basically talking about there's all this pressure, right, on the ecosystem right now. And then it got even worse with COVID, right? More and more pressure. Right. And so when you, it's like I have a slide I show, it's like a vice, right? So it's like you have serial owners on one side of it. You've got governments doing restarts that you need BIM and you need digitization, you need IC, industrialized construction. You've got the proof points of like the great part about like, some of the modular builders as well as the fabricators that have made pieces and parts, the proof points of some of those specialty companies, and a lot of them tend to be small, that you can say, well, if they could do it, why can't we do it at our tier 1 build, right? So that puts pressure on them, and the super subs put pressure on them. And so it's squeezing mostly the two big personas, which are architects, engineers, and sort of the builder 2 columns, right? Well, what happens when you put things under pressure is the lines start to blur, right? Like, and that's what's going on now. There's a lot of like, what is my new role in the world in the future? And so I don't know if defining them will help as much as the skill sets. It's better to define the skill sets you might need and what how the jobs are changing and the processes are changing, rather than saying like, I'm a systems integrator. Well, most people don't even know what a manufacturer is, let alone like what a systems integrator is. So it's like, I think it's more important to define the skill sets, and also important to understand the readiness of your company. So, one of the things we're doing in our convergence consulting group is we're working with small outside consultants to that are, sort of like specific to different areas within the ecosystem. And a lot of what I help them focus on is readiness assessments and Shingos and things like that. So that, listen, you could sell somebody a level 4. My friend Brent always says, you can sell somebody a level 4 piece of automation, but if they're at level 1 readiness, that thing's just going to collect dust and cost them a lot of money. Just because they can afford it doesn't mean they should have it yet. And I think that's going to be important to this, that we understand what needs, our roles and skills need to change, and how ready we are for that. How ready is our company to change, and what our skill sets are. So I'm less concerned about the name than I am about, what skills and processes you need to put in place to survive and thrive, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go to one more question, and then I'm going to wrap up with 2 things. I want to talk to you about the industrialized construction curriculum, workforce a little bit, and can we come together as an industry, and we'll wrap up. But first, let's go to this question. Joel's back. There isn't a need to vertically integrate when the tech facilities better supply chain management through DFMA and not the design intent Autodesk is built upon. Maybe it's the likes of Autodesk holding us back.
I wish that were true, Joel, but like, as you know, unfortunately, like I'll use modular housing as an example. When you try to chip away at something from the bottom up, it doesn't get very far in an ecosystem. That's where Clayton had it wrong, right? If that were true, modular housing would be the #1 form of housing on this planet. It's not, right? And we've had it for a long time. So I truly believe that we have to work hand in hand, and no one company is big enough to make a difference, right? So there's a lot of cool stuff coming out of small manufacturers and things like that, but no one company is going to do this on their own. There's no one ring to rule them all, and you know that. I think you're pushing me on, Joe, which I love it, because we need to work with guys like you. We need to work with guys, out there that are doing all kinds of stuff. But at the end of the day, you need top down from the biggest influencers, the biggest companies, including Autodesk and other tech companies. You need the biggest influencers to make the biggest changes and to enable cool stuff like Joel's doing to make it possible to be more widespread, to start getting it into the hands of people the way in which they design today and how they're going to design in the future. I think that's really important. I think, the infighting that's gone on in the smaller parts of this industry is just honestly distasteful at this point. I think it's just got to stop. It doesn't do anyone any service, right? It's like, I get it. I know I'm really disrupted. I've said some things you didn't like in the past, and most of them came, if not all, came true. I know you don't love that, but unfortunately, that's what it is. There are great people out there. I'm not the only person that has done that, and it's buck the system. But do we want to punish people, or do we want to actually get ahead as a group? I'm all for getting ahead as a group, right? I reached a lot of olive branches out. They're not always returned, but I feel like, we have to stop this nonsense. We can rearrange deck chairs on the modular Titanic all we want, but at the end of the day, it's still the Titanic at this point. We have to think bigger.
Absolutely. Jerry McCaughey agrees with you, Amy. Great discussion, Dave. And Amy, we need to have more of this straight talking. Amy, just to hit on a few things that you mentioned, you're absolutely right. As an industry, and we're going to talk about can we come together, but even in our world, my world, where I came from, modular, and has expanded into a much broader conversation because the needs there. The tried and true modular folks that have been out there when I was building, there's a big awakening company. When you sit on top of where I'm at right now with talking with you and all these people globally, there's some serious, we're talking billions and billions and billions of dollars that are looking to come and take this market, and they're building and they're just going to explode, in my opinion. It's not a little bit. What's your thoughts on that?
Look, I think at the end of the day, what is the money that's going to be coming in? You could be a modular builder right now. And I was one of them. And I would say, I don't know what they would have been buying at the time. Many of our construction modular world has been stuck, and they haven't really become, not all of them, they haven't become more manufacturers. When it takes 3 times as long to design the building, but you can make it, a month faster. But then, what did you really gain? That's the problem, right? So it's we can't just focus on, the fabrication part is easy, making things with automation, that. You can make things faster. You can. It's enabling design to know how to, design in for those things, utilizing tech to make that happen. I think that's what's really fallen down. And you have to think about as somebody asked in one of the questions, what do I do as a small mom and pop shop? You have to ask yourself, what do you have as residual value if somebody were to come and buy you that they couldn't easily replicate? If all you are is a shed with some guys in there that know how to do some stuff, and you've got a couple designers making some things, you better rethink that. You need to start productizing. That's what you can do now. You can start productizing and spending your time on things that can be, repetitive and productized and standardized. And I don't mean just as long as it's black. A wide variety of products. So start thinking productization as a mom and pop shop. And what would somebody want to actually buy you for? What would somebody want to invest in your company for? What would somebody want to partner with you? I think bidding, by the way, one day goes out the window, hopefully. I think partnering and things like that you need to have it right now for the near term future and things that are going to happen. But I'm a big fan of partnering and a big fan of understanding. And you need a network to find those partners, and you need to understand what jobs are out there. But ultimately, we used to be cash for chaos, right? In our ecosystem, we were making money across the information. We have to stop that. We have to now make money because we know the information and because there's no lack of information, and start thinking bigger, right? With more certainty.
100%. All right, Amy, this is going to be our last question. And I want to talk about this because I know in your heart and you believe in this wholeheartedly, and that is educating the workforce. Where are they coming from? You and I talked a little bit about industrialized construction curriculum. Tell us a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, I did a Queen of Prefab mini-series, right? And actually it's getting re-released on we're creating a Queen of Prefab playlist on Autodesk's YouTube site. So I'll be on YouTube coming up soon. And one of the episodes, there was a 23-year-old guy in a mechanical shop. And I said, how do you like running this piece of automated equipment? And he was like, it's better than hanging drywall. That's what he said. He's like, I am the best at this in the shop. I run it off my iPad. I know how to do all this stuff. And I was like, look, at the end of the day, we need industrialized construction for young people, for diverse populations to get into this space. And yes, we need to do it from people that are older, but we need to start educating at the college level. So we have put together an industrialized construction curriculum that we are rolling out soon at Autodesk and with some of the colleges. Right. And by the way, I'm doing it. This sounds crazy, but I'm working on it at all hours of the night and the weekends because I know how important it is, because we can't keep teaching the same old. And it's more than just, modular and prefab. We have to start teaching people about building information modeling. We have to start teaching people about convergence and platform and computational design. And we have to start teaching people that, there is a place for them with technology in this world for that 23-year-old, that sustainability is not just environmental, it's holistic sustainability with industry sustainability from whatever industry you're in, by bringing people into the space, social sustainability and economic sustainability for your community. We need industrialized construction for many of those holistic, sustainable practices. And it really, a big part of that will be educating, people that are going to colleges, and trade contractors and trade unions. I think it's part of that as well.
Yeah, 100%. Amy, thank you so much. This has been awesome having you on the show today. And, education's huge to us as well. And I look forward to talking to you more about that. Speaking of education, everybody, we will be live on Thursday with Tavistock Development at Lake Nona in Orlando, Florida. You need to join us. We are going to be streaming live with NAHB and the student chapter into several universities across this country to do just that. Bring all of this content and resources together so we can let people know how great our industry is to be in. We have every faucet, we have every job, we have every skill that is needed out there in any other industry. Why not ours? And ours is growing fast, right? And this is what's cool about it. You get people like Joel and some of these other ones that are really thinking differently with their design and parametric and generative. We're off to a bright future. I do believe that. So, Amy, I hope you can join us on some of those journeys throughout this year.
I'm going to try for sure. And by the way, anybody, if you reach out to me, I'm a friend. I'm not a foe. I will definitely help whoever in these comments has said things I love, things I don't love. I'm in there for you. I'm here as a representative of all of you. So I'm here to help you.
Awesome. All right, Amy. So listen, I got a flight to catch. I'm heading back south again, which is fun, looking for some warm weather. And for yourself, thank you so much for being on the show. Everybody else that's out there that tuned in, I know there was a lot of you watching. Quite a few of you commented. We will get to your comments if we didn't get to them today at some point and respond to you. So thanks again. And Amy, thank you. You have a wonderful day. And follow Amy everywhere. She's everywhere.
Thanks, guys.
You gotta follow. Queen of Prefab, I'm Dave Cooper. We will see you next time. Amy, don't go anywhere. I'll come right back to you after the outro. Bye now.